Whether you're viewing a sculpture, a painting, or a photograph, color can evoke a strong emotional response in the viewer. In previous lectures, we focused on composition, perspective, and the direction of light. You are beginning to train your eye and build a visual vocabulary that is applicable to many different art mediums. This lecture will help you understand how to observe and capture the different moods of color in a still image and understand when to use black and white. Specifically, we'll discuss capturing monochromatic, complementary, and analogous colors to create a mood in your images and draw an emotional response from your viewer. We'll also examine the why, when, and how to change a color image into a black and white photograph. If you have any type of color blindness, please feel free to complete all or part of this photo challenge in black and white. It's up to you to decide your level of comfort. I've added a link to the various types of color blindness for more information. Before we start talking about all the different color scenarios you'll be photographing for this challenge, it's good to know what each of the colors symbolizes. We'll also use the basic color wheel, something you may have used in elementary school, to help you understand the relationship between different colors and how individual colors can be combined to create a variety of moods in a scene. Let's start with red, the color of fire and blood. It's associated with energy, stability, and passion. This volcano eruption gives the viewer a sense of the intense energy, and the silhouetted figure shows the massive scale of the event. Orange combines the energy of red, happiness of yellow, and represents enthusiasm, creativity, and optimism. This low perspective of a floating lantern festival exemplifies the monks' enthusiasm as they release the lanterns into the sky. Yellow, being the color of the sun, is associated with happiness, fun, and wealth. Even though it's raining in this scene, it still evokes a happy mood. The field of yellow flowers and yellow umbrella lighten the mood of an overcast and rainy day. Green is the color of the natural world and symbolizes harmony, communication, and nature. The centered horizon, reflection, and small bench in this image give the viewer a tranquil feeling of being surrounded by and part of the natural environment. Blue is the color of the sky and sea and symbolizes peace, honesty, and devotion. This scene of an iceberg combines both the sea and night sky in one image to give the viewer a feeling and sense of peace. Purple combines the stability of blue and the energy of red and is associated with intuition, imagination, and meditation. The soft image, including a foreground, midground, and background with layers of mist, create a meditative feel for the viewer. One of your challenges is to capture a monochromatic scene. A monochromatic color scheme is made up of multiple shades of the same basic color. For example, ultramarine, Egyptian, and royal are all shades of blue. Parrot, lime, and java are all shades of green. And pumpkin, ginger, and papaya are all similar shades of orange. Different colors can play a significant role in our emotional response to an image, and how a color makes you feel can vary based on your specific culture. For example, in the US, yellow is often seen to represent happiness, whereas in Egypt, yellow is reserved for mourning. A monochromatic color scheme is probably one of the easiest color schemes you'll be able to capture and can be found just about everywhere you look. Monochromatic colors found on the color wheel can be viewed in any one of these individual wedges. Uta Barth is a contemporary photographer who often emphasizes color in her photographs. In this particular scene of a flower on a windowsill, Barth used the monochromatic color of orange as a creative approach to a still life. She used both light tones and dark tones, but all the various colors are orange. In this image, Laura Latinsky used a basic white color palette. It's not a pure white because you will see different shades and highlights, but the entire image, except for the very bottom, consists of white. In this photograph by Gabriella Roscoe, you'll notice there's some reddish-brown tones. There are highlights and shadows, but the color is consistent throughout. By keeping the color consistent, we as viewers are able to focus more on the shape and form of the subject and look for its meaning. This powerful monochromatic image, taken after 9/11 by Jeff Mermelstein, occurred because everything was covered in ash. You have slight tonal variations, but the scene is really a monochromatic image, almost appearing as a black and white. The lack of contrasting colors allows the viewer to feel and imagine how horrific it must have been to experience this event. This image taken by Jason Evans highlights the monochromatic blue of the scene. Notice how the water and sky seem to fade into one. When photographing for this challenge, you'll need to think about the time of day. For monochromatic scenes, it's best to start out photographing on an overcast day so that you are not getting a lot of contrasting light in the scene. Pete Turner, another master of color, photographed this during the golden hour, which accentuates the warm tones of a scene. The golden hour is a common term used by photographers. It's the hour after the sun rises and the hour before the sun sets, where long shadows cast from the low angle of the sun produces tonally rich images. In this example by Pete Turner, you can see the varying degrees of highlights and shadows going from an almost pure white to an almost pure black, but it's all blue tones. One way to create a dynamic image is to use a complementary color combination. Complementary colors are located opposite each other on the color wheel, like red and green, or blue and orange. Complementary colors are best known for creating high contrast in a photograph and are especially good to use in small doses to make the subject stand out. Gary Regner found the naturally occurring complementary colors of violet and yellow. Even though the lighting is soft and diffused, these two complementary colors make the image pop and add a dynamic element. It's no surprise that Demetrius, the photographer of this fishing village, focused in on the fishermen wearing all red framed against the rolled up green nets. By framing the two complementary colors next to each other, it increases the visual impact, giving each subject a significant role. This installation piece titled Revenge of the Goldfish was set up using the complementary colors of blue-green and red-orange. This color combination creates a striking contrast between the goldfish and the background. When you're looking for subjects to photograph for this challenge, think about the proportion of color in the scene. You don't have to have 50% violet and 50% yellow. You can use just a small amount of one color, contrasting against the other color. This often produces a much more dramatic effect in the case of the swimmer with warm skin tones taken against the cool tones in the water. While color and tone are the main focus of this project, you still need to pay attention to your composition and perspective. Think about the different angles that you can select and look for different viewpoints that are not normally seen by someone just walking down the street. Initially, you'll probably be drawn to the most vibrant hues and the most intense colors. But don't disregard the more subtle and neutral tones as seen in this image of a blue poppy. Challenge yourself and search for scenes in obscure locations, like this image of two military personnel sitting on a red couch. It's the complementary colors of red and green making this image stand out. An analogous color scheme is made up of colors that are adjacent to each other on the color wheel. For example, adjacent to yellow, we find yellow-green and yellow-orange. Adjacent to red, we find red-orange and red-violet. And finally, adjacent to blue, we find blue-green and blue-violet. Analogous color schemes are often pleasing to the viewer because they are frequently found in our natural environment. When looking for analogous colors, think back to the composition lecture. You may need to search for the proper background. This photograph of an installation emphasizes power and energy. Not just because of the subject matter of the army men and missiles and the person hiding under this table, but also because of the analogous colors of red and yellow. The Natural Science and Engineering Research Laboratory at the University of Texas in Dallas created this green building utilizing materials that reflect a range of colors. The analogous purple, blue, and subtle greenish blue framed against the clear sky support the goal and overall feeling of a green building. Ada Kim captured a tranquil scene by using the naturally found analogous colors of blue and green on an early morning misty day. Shooting during different times of the day, under the various lighting conditions discussed in a previous lecture, can give you a variety of results. Take for example these images shot a day apart in Toronto by Joey Davila. We go from a vibrant and warm feeling hardlit scene to a monochromatic and diffuse lit cold feeling scene. Why would you shoot a scene in color if you knew the end result would be a black and white image? You have a much larger tonal range to work with in an editing program if you shoot the image in color, and you also have more options if you ever want to use it in color. What subjects make a good black and white photograph? Scenes that have texture and shadows can make excellent candidates to turn into black and white images. Black and white images accentuate the shape and form of the subject. Changing a color image to a black and white automatically changes the mood. By removing the color, you remove the viewer's emotional response to the different colors and color combinations discussed earlier in this lecture. Your final image for this challenge will be to photograph in color and then change the image to black and white. This image, taken by Ansel Adams, highlights the shape and form, structure, and texture of Half Dome in Yosemite National Park. Edward Weston was truly a master of light. Capturing the subtle details and subtle tonal ranges really gives this two-dimensional flat photograph of a pepper a three-dimensional feel. Weston was able to photograph the ordinary in an extraordinary way, and in the absence of color, we are able to focus on the intricate folds of light and shadow. Once again, always pay close attention to how you compose your scene. This image by Minor White uses a bullseye approach and focuses on balance and symmetry throughout the scene. Continue to practice the photo techniques you learned in earlier lectures. Photography is about building on previous knowledge and experience. This image by Clyde Butcher takes advantage of early morning light and a slow shutter speed, which smooths out and softens the water. On a visit to Clyde Butcher's gallery in Florida, he said he once waited 10 years for the perfect light to photograph a creek. This famous photograph by Eugene Smith enlightened the world on the mercury poisoning that was going on in Japan. It was runoff from a factory that was causing these birth defects. Think about the light source in this image. It's coming from one single window, illuminating the scene. Pay attention to the direction and quality of light when you're photographing for this challenge. Sally Mann is probably best known for the photographs of her children. One element that can make a great black and white photograph is the subtle tonal changes and tonal variations. So when you're seeing in color, you also need to look for shape and form and the different highlights and shadows that are being created by the light being cast upon your subject. This is a Pulitzer Prize-winning photograph by Kevin Carter that gained worldwide attention. The original color image is neutral, but what really makes this stand out is the subject matter, highlights, and shadows. This is just as powerful, if not more powerful, as a black and white. Kevin said he didn't help the child, but the child eventually got up and the vulture flew away, and the child made its way to the food line that the child was waiting in line for. Ultimately, Kevin couldn't handle the atrocities that he was seeing and photographing during the apartheid in South Africa, and he ended up taking his own life. You'll use an editing program of your choice to change a color image to a black and white. It's much better to shoot in color and then do the adjustments in black and white because you have a much better tonal range to work with. Please remember, if you have any type of color blindness, please feel free to complete all or part of this photo challenge in black and white. It's up to you to decide your level of comfort.